not given land. God did not want them to what? Yeah, He did. Yeah, I don't want you to be contained to one area. I don't want you to live in one area. I want you to be amongst all of the population so that what? Yeah, they could perform their duties. They could instruct the people. They could instruct them in the law. They would always have someone nearby who knew the law, who could interpret the law and understand the law, and it could give instruction in regards to the law. All right. So they did not receive a land inheritance in the sense that the other tribes did. However, they did receive an inheritance. Okay, and we'll talk about that next week. They did receive something. All right. All right. Let's see. I wanted to see, and it's a great deal of the rest of the book is the giving out of the inheritance. Chapter 14, chapter 15, and chapter 16 are all in regards to what land was given and who the land was given to, and how important it was. Because they're, well, see, I'm going to get into what I'm doing. All right. All right. Chapter 18. Let's go to chapter 18. This is the allotment of the remaining land. And look at what's happened here. He says, and then the whole congregation of the people of Israel assembled at Shiloh and set up the tent of meeting there. And look at what it says. The land lay what? What's that? Subdued. What does subdued mean? What does it mean to subdue something? Yeah, it's conquered. It's in their control. There is no one left to stand before them in opposition. So what, as you know, we said last week, that what did Joshua do? What did we say about Joshua and the work that God gave him to do? Yeah, it says he left nothing undone that God told him to do. He left nothing undone that God told him. He did everything that God said He told him to do. And I said, you know, what a great way to be remembered as a child of God, right? You imagine having anything better on your tombstone than have the words on there, left nothing undone that God told us to do. You know, today we have the same thing. While we're not told to go and subdue lands and that kind of thing, do we not have instruction from the Lord? Well, yeah, I mean, absolutely we have instruction from the Lord. What is our instruction from the Lord? What are some of the things that we are told that we are to do as children of the Lord? Okay, go and teach all nations. What else? Okay, hold fast to the word, right? What else? Love our neighbors. Ooh, that's one where it gets a little tricky, right? I don't love that guy. He's a jerk, you know. I've tried to be nice to him, and he won't be nice back. I don't think I should have to love him. You know, I don't think God meant it when He says love someone that doesn't love me back. Tough commandment. You know, we talked about the greatest commandment is what? Love the Lord thy God, right? Second commandment as the first, what? Look at the number one commandment is love the Lord thy God. The second one is love thy neighbor. It says that God sees that as fairly important, doesn't He? I mean, that's something that's very, and it's interesting. The second commandment is not some physical thing that we're supposed to go and do and make some big scene about some major physical accomplishment that we're supposed to do. It's more of an internal one, right? Love thy neighbor. Love thy neighbor as thyself. And how important how God set that up as number 2 under the first one, which is love the Lord thy God. And what does it say about those 2 commandments? On those hinge all of the rest of the law. Okay? Now let's think about that today, in today's terms. All right? We love the Lord our God. We love Him with everything that we have. And the second one is like the first. We love our neighbor as ourselves. And on that hinges what? Law of Christ, right? Absolutely. Upon that hinges the law of Christ. So when it talks about going and teaching all nations, does that exclude anyone? Does that exclude people that we don't particularly care for? Does that exclude people that whose mindset is so far removed from our own, even so far removed from God? Does that exclude them? No, absolutely not. So when God tells us, we think about this, the idea of it He says this is the first commandment, and the second commandment is like the first. when we're cold and we're put in the ground on our tombstone, wouldn't it be nice to have put on our tombstone, left nothing undone that was commanded to do, including loving our neighbor as ourselves, as difficult as that is sometimes. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the hardest things is what's interesting, we'll physically do anything that we're commanded to do. But when it comes to the idea of loving our neighbors ourselves, sometimes that's one of our biggest obstacles. That's one of our biggest roadblocks. Right? It's difficult for us to do. What else are we required to do? Forgive, because as we forgive, it will be forgiven us. Yeah, there's a benchmark, right? As God forgives us, we're to forgive others, and that's another thing. I think that once again that gets into the idea about upon those two hinge the rest of the law, and that idea of loving our neighbor includes forgiving them when they err against us. All right, without hesitation, without conditions, right? I'll forgive, but, or I'll forgive if. It means forgive, pure and simple, as God forgives us. What else do we have? I mean, I'm not looking for an exhaustive list. What? Pure religion and undefiled before God the Father is this. It says, I like it says, assist or visit. That word is used it has different meanings, but in that sense, it's the idea. It's not simply going and visiting them; it's assisting them in the present distress. Visit the widows and orphans. But look at the second part of that. It says not only visit the widows and orphans. What's the second part of that pure and undefiled religion before God and the Father is this? Keep oneself unspotted from the world. See, everybody wants to remember the first two, but not the second one. Keeps oneself unspotted from the world. In other words, don't let the world pollute us. Gets right into what they were told, right? Don't get spotted by the world. Don't let the nations that surround you pull you down, because they will. And what did they do? They did. They did. Almost from the very beginning. The children of Israel fell apart and they fell into the lifestyle of the nations that surrounded them. I think one of the ways in which we're drawn into the world is our outlook. Our outlook. Because if you look at the world, the outlook of the world is what? Very dim. It's very dark. There's a great deal of cynicism, and there's mistrust. There's anger, misplaced or not. There's still anger. And I think that's one of the biggest problems when we allow ourselves to be pulled in by the world. Satan has never come. I don't remember Satan ever coming up and trying to get me to do some horrible thing that I would never have thought about doing. Hey, I want you to go and bomb a school bus. Satan never tempted me to go bomb a school bus. But what he has tempted me to do is to develop a cynical attitude or a negative attitude, an angry attitude or a bitter attitude or a mistrustful attitude. That's where he tries, I believe that's where he tries to get most of us, and that's that idea of being unspotted from the world. The world, Satan likes that, because when we're like that, he can encourage us to do all manner of things. While he may have never have attempted me to go bomb a school bus, if I develop a bitter enough, angry enough, mistrustful enough, distrustful enough, bitter attitude, I may eventually be enticed to go and bomb a school bus because I've become angry at the government, or I've become angry at this group of people, or angry at this group of people. But how does it begin? It begins with the small things. Hey, can you believe that they would do something like that? Can you believe that guy would say something like that? Don't you? Probably everybody that's like him thinks like him. And why would you want to be friends with somebody like that? Why wouldn't you want to? Let's think about, And there it goes. It starts with the smallest things, and it eventually develops into the bigger thing. And that's that idea of remaining unspotted from the world is not developing, first of all, the attitude of the world. And the attitude of the world is a dark one. Man, all you have to do is get on and watch people comment on different things, and it's never a positive thing. It's always a negative thing. And once we've developed that attitude, it's a short course, it's a short trip to some abhorrent behavior, and all because of a development of an attitude. And that idea of don't be like the world, because that's what the world is. That's what the world is, and that's what He wants us to be. Okay, I'll get them here, and then I'll eventually get them over to this place. Okay. All right. So anyway, sorry, I think I took us a little bit off track. It tells us that Joshua left nothing undone that the Lord told him to do. Okay, nothing undone that the Lord told him to do. But if we look at this, it says, the land lay subdued amongst them. What does that mean? What that means is this. As Joshua left nothing undone that he was told to do, it also meant that God left nothing undone that He said that He would do. He accomplished everything that He said He was going to accomplish for the children of Israel, for the Israelites. He said, I'm going to drive them out before you. I will subdue the earth, and that's exactly what happened, isn't it? So God is, as Joshua and the people were faithful and concerned to their commandments, God was faithful and concerned with His promises, right? He said He would do something, and He did it. There were a couple of hiccups along the way, but whose fault were those? Certainly it wasn't God's. God said, this is what I want you to do. It was the Israelites. They messed up. They made a couple of blunders along the way, and all of that was because they either did not obey or they didn't inquire of the Lord what they were supposed to do. Okay, I know this sounds very simplistic, but I just want us to think today about the idea of we don't want to leave anything undone that we're told to do. At the end of the day, what's going to happen if we leave nothing undone that we are to do? It's going to read the same thing, isn't it? The world will lie subdued before us. Now, doesn't mean we're conquering the world or anything like that, but what does that mean? What does that mean? If God is faithful concerning all of His promises, and He is, and He does as He said He's going to do because He will, what is our life going to look like? What is our world going to look like? How's it going to be for us? Okay? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Certainly. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yes. And again, when we talk about this, the idea of the land laid subdued before us, and I like what you said about the idea of intellect, because when we are children of God, how do we look at things? We don't look at things in the same way that the world looks at things, right? Because we're separate from the world. We're apart from the world. The way we look at things, our outlook is very important. Because for the world, if the world were to interpret this, the land lay subdued before it. If somebody in the world who was not a Christian, who did not have the mind of God, was not seeking the mind of God, when they read this, how would they read this? How would they interpret this? What would that mean to them? Okay, all right. How about, behold, my barns are filled. So what I will do is I will tear down my barns and build bigger barns. And then I will take my ease. Okay, that's the way the world looks at things, right? That's their idea of the land lay subdued before them. That's how they would interpret something like that. I have plenty of wealth. Okay, I don't need anything else. I don't need anything from God. I don't need anything from man. I have my own, and I don't have to worry about that. That's the way the world looks at things. Yeah. How else? How else would the world look at things? How about my enemies? I've destroyed my enemies. I've destroyed my enemies. Those who would stand before me, those who would seek to do me harm, I have defeated them, and I've set them to rout. I've set them to run. Is that the way the world looks at it when it says the land lay subdued before them? Yeah. If you're in the world, that's how you view things. That's how you look at things. For a Christian, when we read this, how does that read to us? How would we interpret something like that through our lens of being a child of God? When it says that the land lay subdued before us, how do we interpret that? How would we say, I've done everything that I said that I was told to do. God has done everything that He said that He would do, and now the land lays subdued before me. What does that mean to the Christian? And how does that manifest? Let me ask you, how does that manifest itself? How's that there? Yeah. In some ways, in some cases, that's exactly right. For many of us, for the land to lay subdued. Now, understand, I'm not talking about that's what I'm saying. As a Christian, we're not worried about the world. We're not worried about whether we've got a lot of money or whether we've got everything like that. That's not our concern. All right. In a spiritual sense, that's true. It may be the matter of, listen, I've run the good race, I've fought the good fight, and now I am going to leave this world, never to return, but I'm going on to something that's so much greater than I had before. It's staggeringly greater than it was before. It's mind-bogglingly greater than it was before. Because I won't ever have to worry about anything that's going on this earth again. I'm done. For some of us, for many people, they've lived their entire life with a sense of a lack of direction. They've lived it with a lack of purpose. They've lived it with there was nothing that they could throw an anchor and grab a hold of. Okay, they're like that ship without an anchor, and it's just it's all over the place. Nothing was tying them to anything of permanence. And now, because they obey and God has fulfilled His promise, now what does their life look like? Yeah, or they finally have a sense of purpose. They finally have a sense of purpose that they didn't have before. There's something that they can trust in for the first time, maybe in their entire lives. Okay, the land lays subdued before them. For the first time, I have a sense of purpose. I'm not worried anymore. I'm not fearful anymore, because that was a part of my life for many, many years, and now I'm not worried anymore. It doesn't mean that bad things might happen to me. I mean, that's still a very real possibility. I may die. I may get sick. I may go broke. I may not have anything. I might not have two nickels to rub together. But it doesn't really matter, because the land lays subdued before me. I like this. I like this wording, and I know in this particular sense, it's talking about the land of Canaan. The land of Canaan lays subdued before them. But in order for this to happen, two things had to occur. They had to do what they were told to do, and God had to be faithful concerning His promise. Those two things had to occur. If one of those was missing, then it wouldn't have, this statement would not be true. It would not be here. That's important. I think that's fantastic. The idea that God is faithful concerning His promises. If we but do as He tells us to do, God is going to subdue the land before us, figuratively or literally in this case. All right. Yeah. If God is for me, what can man? Who can stand against me? What can man do to me if God is for me? The worst they can do, what? Take my life? Okay. I don't really want to die, but if that's what's going to happen, that's what's going to happen. I'll die. Because why? I'm not worried about death. I don't fear death. Death has no more power over me. Okay. Mm-hmm. Oh, really? Well, it's not, is it? Well, maybe so. All right, let's continue on real quick. Verse 2, there remained among the people of Israel 7 tribes whose inheritance had not yet been apportioned. So Joshua said to the people of Israel, how long will you put off going in to take possession of the land, which the Lord, the God of your fathers, has given you? Provide 3 men from each tribe, and I will send them out, that they may set out and go up and down the land. They shall write a description of it with a view to their inheritances, and then they shall come to me. They shall divide it into 7 portions. Judah shall continue in his territory in the south, and the house of Joseph shall continue in their territory in the north. And you shall describe the land in 7 divisions and bring the description here to me. And I will cast lots for you here before the Lord our God. The Levites have no portion among you, for the priesthood of the Lord is their heritage. And Gad and Reuben and half the tribe of Manasseh have received their inheritance beyond the Jordan eastward, which Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave them. So the men arose and went, and Joshua charged those who went to write the description of the land, saying, Go up and down in the land, and write a description, and return to me, and I will cast lots for you here before the Lord in Shiloh. So, once again, they were commanded to do something. What did they do? They went and did it. So the men went up and passed up and down in the land, and wrote in a book a description of it by towns in 7 divisions. Then they came to Joshua in the camp at Shiloh, and Joshua cast lots for them in Shiloh before the Lord. And there Joshua apportioned the land to the people of Israel, to each his portion. The lot of the tribe of the people of Benjamin, according to its clans, came up, and the territory allotted to it fell between the people of Judah and the people of Joseph. On the north side, their boundary began at the Jordan. And the boundary goes, and it goes into, and it's, you notice he's very specific. He didn't say you just go wherever you want to. He said this is going to be your land as an inheritance. And all of the land was apportioned out. There were portions of it, I'm going to get into it again, and I don't want to. We'll mess up my thing for next time. So, but continuing on all the way through in 17 and 18 and in 19, it talks about the inheritance for each of those tribes. And each of them was given a specific area in which it would be their inheritance for in perpetuity, to continue on. It was never to pass from them. It could not be taken from them by force. The only way they would be able to give it up is if they gave it up for a particular period of time, a short period of time, and then it would be returned to them. And again, this goes into, I talked about this last time, there was a reason that the children of Israel were warned against desiring a king. And one of those reasons is that the king would decide that he would want a portion of their land, and he would come and he would take it from them by force. And we read several times in the books of the Kings and the books of Chronicles where the kings came and decided that they wanted a portion of that land, and they seized it from them in violation of God's law. Remember, if they're evil, they're not regarding God's law as anything anyway, remember? If they wanted it, they took it. That's what made them evil. And that's one of the sins that came up before God when the prophets were prophesying. When it talks about the rich devour the widow's lands, that land, it's interesting. God saw fit to give the widows their husband's land. It went to them, not to the husband's family. It went to the widows. Okay, so for everybody that says, God's a sexist, no. He made very clear, that woman, that husband's wife, is to be taken care of. She wasn't to be cast out, and it wasn't until the people fell away from God that began to happen. While they were still living under God's commands and God's law and obeying God's law, they were taken care of. But one of the reasons that the prophets were prophesying and talking about how and discussing how Israel and Judah were in violation of God's law, that was one of them. Is that the rich were consolidating their power. They were seizing land and seizing the inheritance of the children of Israel against God's law. And God did not take that kindly. He said, this is serious. This is serious business. You're worshiping your false idols. You're taking your kinsman's land away from them. You're marrying outside of your people. You're doing all of these things. All of this was a part of that laundry list of sins that the Israelites were committing against God. Okay? All right, we're going to stop. We're going to stop because I really wish I'd brought that thumb drive. Next week, we're going to talk about it. That's right.